So I have here above my frequency table and relative frequency table, and what we'll often want to do is make a picture out of this organized data, and it allows us to sort of look for patterns and make comparisons more readily than just by looking at the table. So we've made the first type of visual from the frequency table, and this is a bar chart. You'll notice it has a title, People on the Titanic by Ticket Class, and then the left column, or the vertical column, is labeled frequency, where you just have the number of people, or the number of instances of people, and my scale is going up by 250. And then the categorical variable class is on the x-axis. So we've got our first, second, third, and crew. And we've basically just represented the bars as they correspond to the numbers that are in each class. And from this visual, you can sort of see that those who are in, there are a greater proportion of people on the Titanic who are in the crew, and that followed by people in third class, and then first and second. So that's a little bit more easy to see here in the visual, and you can even compare just at a quick glance more easily than you can in the table. Now we could also make a relative frequency table by converting them to percentages. And so what we would do is same sort of thing. I'm going to give this a title. I'm going to say People on the Titanic by Ticket Class. Only this time, instead of my y-axis being just counts, it's percentages. And our x-axis is still going to be class, broken up into the values of the variables. So I'm going to make one bar for first class. I want to make another bar for second class. I want to make another for third. I want to make another for crew. And you notice I'm not going to make them touching. Okay, that's when we make histograms, which was when we analyze quantitative variables. But for categorical, we separate them. So for first class, if I look above, it looks like 14.8% of people on the Titanic were in first class. So I'm going to go up to roughly 14.8%, which is somewhere around here. Second class, it looks like about 12.9%, so that should be roughly here. Should be a little less. Third, 32%, so that would be roughly here. And again, I wouldn't get too bogged down in how accurate you're being, only because this is just to give us a visual representation of this data. And then the crew makes up about 40.2%, so that should be here. All right, and so my scale's a little different, but the relationships remain the same, right? We can tell from both of these charts that the crew made up the highest proportion of people on the Titanic, followed by third-class citizens, etc. Okay, so we've got bar chart and a relative frequency bar chart as two ways of displaying categorical variables. Another representation for categorical variables is a pie chart, and also a relative frequency pie chart. So on the right here, I have the relative frequency pie chart for people on the Titanic by Ticket Class, and these percentages come from the chart we made on the previous page. And what you'll notice is that the size of each wedge corresponds to the proportion of people within the category. And so that should look, these two pie charts should look identical. I'm going to do one here on the left, which is just a frequency pie chart. And so I would note that, for instance, there are 325 people in first class. Now, you have to have a good sense of how that relates to the total 2,201, and that's sort of where the percentage comes in handy, because 325 is roughly about 15%, and so 15% of the circle in terms of its proportion would be, well, we know that, making a complete right angle here would be 25%, so it needs to be representing less than that. Now we can get if you were presenting this, you can get as detailed as you'd like, but I'm just gonna write first there. I think this section will do. I'm gonna put parentheses there for 325. Okay, so now let's move on to second class. There's 285, so that should be a little smaller. Not too much smaller. This will probably do. Third class is pretty big. It's about 30%. So we'll make that, so 32% is like a third of the circle, so the wedge should have a size that corresponds to that. So this was third class. And again, the total there was 706 people in third class. And then finally we've got the crew, which made up 40%. So again, the key is that the size of the wedges should correspond to the proportion that each of these categories, or each of these instances of the categories make up of the entire circle. And of course, you always want to give a title, so I'll write people on the Titanic. By ticket class. Okay, so two other representations of categorical variables. We've got a frequency pie chart and a relative frequency pie chart.